We're going to look at the basic concepts of democracy, and there's going to be 5 of them. And the first one is the worth of the individual. And this idea in the United States that there is importance placed on each individual person. We all have the potential for common sense, and everyone is entitled to certain unalienable rights. So it's extremely important. It doesn't matter who you are, everyone has the same rights that everyone else has, and there's a lot of importance placed on the individual and not the group. I found this other picture, and I thought it was kind of interesting because the idea of equality versus equity. So in the United States, every person is guaranteed equality of 2 things, and make sure that you get this down in your notes. We are guaranteed equality of opportunity, so everyone has the same opportunities as everyone else, and we are guaranteed equality before the law. So this idea that all men are created equal, we know is definitely not true. We're all not born with the same abilities. We're not all born with the same amount of money in our families. So there's all kinds of differences. But when we start looking at what the Founding Fathers meant when they wrote the Constitution, they definitely wanted to make sure, or it was a goal, that everyone had the same opportunities as everyone else. And we are going to be treated equally before the law. And so the image there with the 3 people watching the ball game, that first image is showing equality. So everyone has the same equal size box. So everybody is being treated equally. On the right-hand side where the 3 are watching, we notice that this is equity. So it's being treated equitably. And what I need for you to understand is the Founding Fathers in this second, and I'm not saying good or bad, right or wrong, the way I would interpret this is the Founding Fathers, instead of taking away the tall guy's box and giving it to the shorter one, the tall guy would keep his box, but the short one would have to go and provide for themselves, make their own second box. So the first person would still have their box, the second person would have their box, but then the person on the right would have 2 boxes, but not because we're taking it away from someone and giving it to someone else. So equity, and that's kind of where we're getting into some of these ideas where we want to redistribute the wealth. We're going to put higher taxes on some of your wealthy and redistribute that wealth and take from them and give, so that it's more equitable or more equal, which is different than saying that everyone has the same opportunities. So on the left-hand side there, everyone has the same size box. Everyone has the same benefit from the same supports, is what it says underneath. But on the second one, it's not equal there because the person on the right has 2 and the person on the left has none. But it's equitable because now everyone has access to that particular, watching that particular game. So make sure you understand concepts of democracy is equal opportunity and equality before the law, not equity. The next one is the idea of majority rule with minority rights, and that's the picture that I have with the scales, where you have the majority on the right-hand side with all of those people, and then on the left-hand side you have one person, but obviously who represents the minority, but something is helping them out, and I would call this, or I would say that what's helping them out is the Constitution, the amendments that have been added to the Constitution, the courts, rulings as they decide on different issues that protect the minority. So we have the majority rule over here, but the minority is helped out once again by the Constitution, which also includes the amendments, and the court's decisions that equal out that, so that we're not having a mob rule by the majority at the expense of the minority. And the final concept is this idea of individual freedom. And there's this constant battle between individual freedom and rule of law. And I'll give you an example of like gun ownership. And we're seeing that more and more. This idea of, as an individual, I have a Second Amendment right to carry a gun. But on the other hand, you have a lot of people who are saying, you know what, we're seeing a lot of people being killed to protect this individual freedom. And at what point do we say um, that public order and safety is more important than the rights of the individual? So here in the United States, that was one of the things, and you can see those two arrows pushing against each other. And so we're constantly trying to say we want to give the individual as much freedom as possible, but at the end of the day, we have to have what's called rule of law, which means everyone has to abide by the rules. Everyone is subject to the same laws. No one is above the law. And so no one person's individual freedom is greater than this idea of protecting public order and safety. So there's a fine line and balance between that. And then need for compromise. The one side says what you say, the other side, somebody else says something else. And so compromising has to be a combination of those. It can't be all your way. It can't be all somebody else's way. And I always find it interesting. The Constitution itself was called a bundle of compromises because the Founding Fathers spent months trying to come up with the best solution. You had those who were in favor of a stronger central government. You had those who were in favor of leaving the powers within the states. And so they tried to find this balance. And no one walked away completely happy with what they ended up with, but they thought that they came up with a document that did the best for the most people. So Constitution's a bundle of compromises. No one should be happy. There's a give and take. Everyone should be a little bit disappointed, but at the end of the day, it's what's best for the whole. There's this term I'm just going to throw out, and I'm not going to actually test you on it, but I think it kind of describes what we're seeing today, this idea of hyperpluralism, where you have these interest groups, and it used to be the different interest groups and factions and all those would work together, come to a compromise. But now what we're seeing is Democrats and Republicans really digging in and saying, you know what, I don't want to compromise. I don't want to give in and being seen weak, and I might lose support of my voters. So the Republicans are digging in and saying, I'm not going to compromise. The Republicans and Democrats are both doing that. So at the end of the day, we're kind of seeing what's called gridlock, where nobody wants to give in, and nothing is being accomplished. So these are the 5 basic concepts of democracy: the worth of the individual, equality of opportunity and before the law of every person, this idea of majority rule with minority rights, need to compromise, and then individual freedom, always knowing that we have public order and safety that we have to also maintain.